to you.
Hi, it is Shay. I use she, her, or they, them pronouns. I am in a poorly lit space with empty shelving and I have braids, and that's my intro. Who wants to go next?
I'll go. My name is Darlene Derby. I am currently outside. I'm in a white bathrobe. I have gray hair in a ponytail, and I use she, her pronouns. Thank you.
Keep it rolling, y'all. Popcorn it up, Laura.
Hi there, I'm Laura Stamis. I use she, her pronouns. I am wearing a mustard colored sweater, and I have earbuds and white skin and medium length brown hair.
I'll go. Hi, I'm Casimir DeWolf, Cas for short. I use he, him, or they, them pronouns. I'm in a poorly lit bedroom because my kid has her autistic social club right now on the other computer. So we're both on Zoom right now. And I have brown hair and a messy bun and some facial hair. That's check.
I'm Kelsey, she, her pronouns. Yeah, pretty pale white lady. And I can't get the lighting right in here at nighttime either. There's always some sort of glare. That's okay.
Hi everybody, I'm Drift. I use they, them pronouns. I'm in my dining room. I'm wearing a dark green hat, red walls. I have a beard, glasses, white, very white. Good to see you all.
Hi, I'm Annalise. I use she, her pronouns. I have brown hair and a brown sweater on, and I'm in my office / living room where there's some background commotion and will probably continue to be so. So I will try to mute as much as possible.
Bob says in the chat that he's in the waiting room. I do not see anyone in the waiting room. *6.
Bob Ozer here. I guess I'm out of the waiting room. And I've got my almost Mr. Rogers sweater on, and I'm the old guy here, and it's he or him.
Listen to that buttery non-Darth Vader voice. We love to hear it.
Thanks, Bob. This is Emily. You can toggle *6 to mute and unmute if you'd like. You can try that. I'm Emily Magus Russell. I use she, her pronouns. I have white skin and a black turtleneck sweater and reddish hair and a ponytail. And I am in a white room with a blue curtain behind me.
Great. That's everybody. Next on the agenda. Who wants to take notes? I see a smirk budding on the face of one Laura Stamis for who knows what reason.
I can do it if no one else wants to do it. I really don't mind. I don't want to take the opportunity from somebody if they're craving to take notes.
So I love that you say that because I feel super guilty not volunteering. But if it's like your thing and helps you focus, I love to support that. But I also want to take turns if it isn't truly that for you.
All right, I feel very comfortable that I could speak up if I can't do it some night, but I will do it tonight.
Awesome. Great.
Thank you. Great. So we're going to take a couple of moments to ground in together. So for this piece, you're welcome to do it or not do it. You can also turn your video off and do whatever suits you for the next few moments. If you'd like to turn your video off to do the grounding practice, you can do that as well. I'll keep mine on, but you're welcome to turn yours off or keep it on. And what I'm going to ask you to do for this practice today is to find something that you can touch. It doesn't have to be anything special. It can be a desk or a chair or your own clothing, something that has a little bit of texture. So I have my hands on my desk. And you can have your eyes open or closed, whatever suits you best right now. You can even change that up throughout our practice if you'd like. And see if you can bring your attention to your hands. And just being aware to start of your hand and aware of the object that it's touching. See what it's like if you can. If you can't, that's totally fine. But if you can, see what it's like to inhabit your hand. You know, we are as much our hand as we are our thoughts or our mind. So see if you can inhabit your hand and see what it's like to feel this connection between your hand and the object that you're touching. And see what it's like to rest your mind here. This doesn't really have anything to do with thinking. You may also have thoughts. You can let them come and go. See if it's possible to rest your mind in your hand and in this grounded connection with your hand and whatever it's touching. This can be a very visceral reminder that you are here. And you're connected to something. Whatever it is that you're touching, you're connected to in this moment. Just take another breath here to notice that. Resting your mind for a moment in that connection. And then when you're ready, start to come back together. Open the eyes if they're closed. You can turn your video back on if you have turned it off. Darlene, you back? Can you hear us better?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for the waiting room note. I am learning to keep my eye on the waiting room better. Alrighty, thank y'all. So we're gonna check in and look at our agreements. I am gonna share the screen for this piece. And what I'd love to do is have 3 folks. I have the agreements on slides, so they are split up into 3 slides. So if 3 committee members are up for volunteering to read the section of agreements that are on each slide, you'll each take a slide, if that makes sense. So I'll share my screen and maybe it'll make more sense. Okay, and then I'm going to pin. Thank you all for bearing with me. Pin Christine. Okay. And I just learned, for those who need to know this also, that in Google Drive, Google Slides, present is slideshow. I was looking for it at our last meeting. Okay, so is anyone up for volunteering to unmute themselves and read this first batch of agreements?
I will.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It says CSRC agreements. In the process of doing work within the Community Safety Review Committee, we will aim to 1, be curious, 2, acknowledge that we come from different places and different life experiences, 3, center anti-racism as foundational in this process, 4, center anti-oppression, including work to avoid and end racism, sexism, transphobia, homophobia, ableism, saninism, and all forms of oppression. Sanus oppression, can look like pathologizing language, outing people's psychiatric labels, or engaging with people discriminatory due to their psychiatric labeling or, I can't see the bottom, disability. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Darlene. Okay. All right. Is someone up for reading the next batch?
Again. Can you folks hear me? Okay.
Oh,
Our agreements continued. Be kind whenever possible and use respectful language always. Use both and thinking instead of either or, both and thinking instead of either or thinking whenever possible. Use whoa, ouch, oops to pause, acknowledge hurt, and take responsibility. Acknowledge or apologize when we hurt each other, even if we didn't intend harm. Hold space for probable good intentions while acknowledging that intention and impact both do matter. Welcome feedback and accountability from one another enthusiastically and give it generously.
Thanks, Kaz. And I'll just add this last one, which is hard to see down here when this box is up. I don't know how to get it to go away, but it says acknowledge the contradictions. Back there somewhere. Oh no. Okay. And then we have this last batch, if anyone's.
Hold a larger vision. Oh,
Go ahead, honey.
okay. Hold a larger vision of being intergenerational world-changing work and honor realistically the short time frame and limited scope of this one effort inside of that long arc. Be generous and reverent of people's lived experiences, especially stigmatized experiences like incarceration, arrest, poverty, homelessness, abuse, and addiction. Check our biases individually and together. Work to attune to safety, value, and the quality of our human experiences together and aim to make things safer while acknowledging that safety looks different for each person and is never guaranteed. And make change in our community through both the process and the productions of, I can't read the rest.
Me neither. Let me see if I can, I'm going to stop sharing the screen because that's our last one. Thank you, Kelsey. And I will look back to see what that last word is. Oh, make change in our community through both the process and the production of outcomes. So through both the process and the production of outcomes. Great. Thank you all so much for reading through those. Any thoughts or needs coming up currently around those agreements? Alrighty. And in terms of the minutes from our last meeting, we sent them out earlier today. We don't expect that everybody had a chance to review them deep enough to be able to approve them. So we can approve them at our next meeting. They are either up or will be up shortly on the Community Safety Review Committee link in the Brattleboro page, Brattleboro Town page.
This is Shay.
Yeah.
That link is at its new highlighted place on the right side of the Brattleboro homepage. Shout out to
Nice.
Peter Elwell, who I see in the participants box. They're so responsive and quick at the town, you all. So it's a lot easier to find our info. For those of you watching at home, that's a great place to see our minutes from old meetings, our agendas for old and upcoming meetings. And we will be putting other documents on that little highlight on the right side of the Brattleboro page when other things are coming up. So if you're interested in following along, that's your spot. Okay. Are we ready to move on to the next agenda item?
Yeah, I wonder, this is Emily, if anybody has anything they want to say or share about the meetings, the meeting minutes from last week, we can do that, but we can also wait until next week and approve them then. All righty. Looks like we can move on. Thanks, Shay.
No problem. So the next little piece is that we had asked you all to think about what kind of tasks in this more information gathering active part of this process you committee members might be interested in taking on. And I think Emily's going to maybe do another brief screen share and check in with you all briefly about what folks signed up for, where there's like maybe too much overlap, where there's like maybe not enough people on different tasks, what we think about certain tasks. And we'll just kind of maybe, I don't know, finalize is a very formal word, but we'll concretize slightly. We will congeal our initial task assignments so that after this meeting, we can really be sending folks off to do their jobs. So Emily can share that.
Thanks, Shay. This is Emily. I'm going to share the screen briefly, go over what everyone initially said, and then I'm going to unshare the screen for discussion purposes so that we can catch as much of the visual meeting as possible. Okay, so first, I'm going to share the screen, and then I'm going to pin our new interpreter. There we go. Thank you. All right, so I double checked this. I'm pretty sure it's accurate, but what we have here is the different committee tasks and what you signed up for. Now, so for example, anonymous testimony survey, development and data gathering, Laura Stamis signed up for it. And then she also said that she'd be interested in maybe working on the police review and information gathering. So if you said in the comment section that there were other things that you'd be interested in working on, I put those under maybe in the task, but I put your name next to the one you selected in question number 1. Does that make sense? So that's what this maybe business is all about. So the nice thing is we have somebody, except for advertising and engagement, which was a maybe for Bob, second choice, kind of. I didn't want to put that kind of hierarchy on it, though. We have someone signed up for everything, again, including the also the information or the data collection analysis has a couple of maybes as well. I'm just going to check the waiting room. Yes, we do have somebody in the waiting room. Okay. So the most popular items were the participating in the information gathering sessions and the police review. And in a moment, I'm going to unshare my screen. We're going to have a brief conversation about the police review process to better understand. Darlene, you're writing in the comment box, did I do that survey? And no, I didn't get a response from you. So you can also you can unmute and let us know right now if you're clear on any of these tasks that you feel like you'd want to engage in or help with. Or you can also you don't have to respond right this moment. You can.
Yeah, you could, this is Shay. This is Shay. You could also just wait and hear what we have to say about each of these tasks if that's more convenient for you. Either way is totally fine.
Yeah, so and Shay and I discussing today's meeting, we thought it would be helpful to kind of have a little bit more dialogue about what each of these tasks would include, right? And then we can get clarity on what tasks y'all want to actually participate in and in what capacity. Does that make sense? Okay, so a lot of folks were interested in the Brattleboro Police Department review, and then also next was the information gathering. So I'm gonna unshare the screen, and before I unshare the screen, does anyone have anything they want to say? Did I miscapture your interest, or is there anything you want to say about this particular screen before I unshare it? Okay, stop sharing. Can't really unshare. I already did that. All righty. So, okay. So I just want to give a brief, talk a little bit more about the police review part of the work, or I should say the community safety systems review part of the work, which has a sort of a two-part piece, which is the ecosystems map, which we talked a lot about last time we met last week, which will include understanding the current programs and services in the Brattleboro community that meet community safety needs or are tasked with meeting community safety needs, to sort of map out and understand that current ecosystem. So that's one of the subtasks, is to essentially, last week we, Shay is saying she has to step out for just a moment. She'll BRB in just a moment. So if you remember, we spent a fair amount of time. I'm just going to share my screen briefly again to show you that document. We spent a fair amount of time on this document, which is the community safety or the ecosystems review. And I know Drift, you didn't get a chance to see that, so I wanted to show you. And I added in the other organizations that we discussed last week. And we went through and we discussed what we want to do, which organizations we want to prioritize listening sessions with, meaning the folks that they serve, organizing with those organizations, listening sessions to hear from the folks served by those organizations. Shay and I will also be doing one-on-one conversations with leaders and directors and staff at those organizations. So mapping out that ecosystems map to have a final product, one of our outcomes is a map of the current systems. That's one of the tasks that I think Maya was interested in, and maybe Kaz as well. So the other piece of the community safety systems analysis work is the Brattleboro Police Department review. And sorry, I was just checking the chat for a moment. I'm going to check the wait room as well. And I wanted to spend a few moments. I also kind of want to wait for Shay to do that. So actually, I'm going to go over the other tasks and wait for Shay.
I'm also here.
Oh, yay, you're back. All right, Shay's back. So let's talk about the Brattleboro Police Department review briefly. One thing I want to make sure that as much as possible, because to some degree, quality reviews like this are emergent in the sense that they have a sort of quality of tracing the information. So there's a bunch of information that's given to us, which the Brattleboro Police Department, the chief and the captain have already provided, and I've done a cursory review of. And it's mostly summary information and policies and procedures as requested. And then from that first batch of information, whoever helps with this task will read everything with a fine-tooth comb and sort of pull out, based on a metric that I've designed as part of a quality review, what pieces of information we want to look further in or we want to gather more information about, which pieces of information we have questions about, and which pieces of information might start formulating a report or recommendations, right? So we're searching for specific information. I want to back up for a moment and say that this review is a systems review. So we're not looking for information about any individual officer. We might look at individual encounters as a way to gather information, but the information we're gathering is really looking at patterns and processes and structures that are active or current in the Brattleboro Police Department process and as a mechanism of dealing with community safety or responding to community safety, right? And so all of the information we're gathering, even if it's specific information that we're gathering about, about an encounter or a series of encounters, we're gathering information in the aggregate, right? To better understand how this system is operating in our community, alongside the information we're gathering from community experiences about how the system is operating, right? So just to continue to reiterate that this is a systems review and not looking at any individual officer or any individual personnel process. Recognizing that all officers are operating in the system, and what we're really interested in understanding is how effective the system is and what the gaps are and the needs are in the system. And so the review is going to look at these documents, start with the first round of documents, gather the information we can from those documents, and then ask for more documentation based on the questions we have about the first round of mostly summary data documentations, right? We might gather individual or backup documentation, right, to the first level of documentation we've reviewed. And as we've discussed many times in this meeting, when committee members are operating outside of the open meetings, the committee tasks, there can't be decision making happening in that realm, right? And so the task, the Brattleboro Police Review task will really be about reading through policies and procedures and starting to, and kind of entering the data, answering questions that I've determined on the quality metric. And then we'll bring it back to this group. And through my analysis as a facilitator, we'll start to map out the gaps or the needs, right? Or the further questions that we have. Shay, what else do we want to say here?
Well, I just want to say that that was great. This is Shay. And that I think, as a person who has not done that type of work before, I think I had in the deep past, after Emily and I did a lot of talking, had some questions about like how much potential exists in a thing called the quality review. To me, I feel like my less nuanced, less knowledgeable brain felt like it could be like a Yelp review, not really, but like that the possibility in that. I wanted to know more about what the possibility was in that part of the work a little bit. And I think that the possibility is great now, after learning more about that work, and also after hearing more about what similar quality review processes have done or are doing for other organizations in our community. Mm-hmm. So some pretty profound change is occurring, I think, across our community in nonprofits as spurred by this type of work. And it is really nitty gritty on one hand and really like document focused and just reading and spreadsheeting and that. And then there's also this piece where if you dig deeply and you really lay out what is true, then we can really make decisions all together as a community and as a committee and as facilitators about, what are we hearing? So this is what really truly exists, a very, very well-drawn map of what exists. And here is a well-drawn map of what people want and need. Mm-hmm. And now we overlay those two maps together and voila, a bridge to the future that is in a direction that we actually want to go. So I'm pretty jazzed, but also I don't think that the review process needs a ton of people on it because it's mostly just reading each policy of the department and inputting it into a spreadsheet that Emily designed. I think what they come up with, what comes after that is pretty exciting for the larger group of us, which is we have produced this, we have input a lot of data into a spreadsheet, and this is the map. And then on the other end of the process, we've done a lot of one-on-one conversations and we have drawn that map. And then the overlay, I think, is where we're going to do more like joint committee work. But the fine tooth combing is going to be largely Emily, and then maybe some other folks can be combers also. But I would call that task combing more than like whatever. The next phase will be for all of us to do. Kelsey.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to go to Bob first, if that's okay, Kelsey, because sorry. Bob has had his blue hand up, and then Kelsey. Thanks, Shay.
So I'm just this is probably more just so I understand what you're saying. There's a metric that you already have used in the past or gotten from somewhere that you then apply to the data and the policies that are presented here. And when you apply that metric to these policies and this data, you come up with some conclusions or at least some direction for the future. So I guess the one question I would have is that how is that metric validated in the first instance? And or can you give a brief example of how that might play out in, not necessarily in this situation, but in any situation?
Yeah, thank you. Great questions. So I don't use a specific metric for quality reviews. There are many. There are very many that can be used, and I have used many before. The methodology that I use is a tracer methodology, which is by design quite flexible because its intention is to follow the information that emerges, right? And I've done both. I've done tracer methodologies and I've done metrics-based methodologies. And because every system itself is unique, right? And we're not just looking at the hard and fast, rigid policies and procedures, but we're also not just looking at how this one officer or that one officer does something. We're trying to find the living and breathing information, right, about how this community system responds in this community at this time, at this moment, right? And so the tracer methodology has a basic framework of starting with a couple of critical questions, right, which this committee and really our proposal and the RFP has already created, right? Those questions are already created, right? And the question, again, we're asking questions about the Brattleboro Police response to community safety needs, right? And Shay and I had a conversation with the chief and Captain Kerrigan as well this week, which we'll share a little bit more about, where we had a similar conversation of recognizing that there's a lot that happens in this community that people in the community expect the police to respond to that there's an active open question. Are those policing issues? Are the police response the appropriate response, right? So these are this process has already defined some of the questions, right? Now, as we look at the police as a system in response to those questions that are essentially already defined, then we're going to trace the information that we find, each batch of the information that we find, in an emergent way, right? So I know for the benefit of being able to be responsive, we do sacrifice some standardization and some structure, right? To speak to transparency, I'd be happy to share more as we move forward about what ends up getting traced, but I can't really share that before it happens because it's quite emergent. It's quite responsive to the information that comes, right? And so I think what would be good is if we put a police review like standing item on the agenda every time we meet, so that we can be kind of anyone who works on this task can be reporting out to this group like what we're currently tracing. It's also a funny thing, frankly, to be doing so open, and so transparently, because it is like a connecting the dots, as it's happening, right? And so I think there's a few different ways that that's going to work well, which is that we're going to have a couple of committee members pretty engaged in the behind the scenes piece of it, where there'll be some accountability, right? And then we're also going to have check-ins at this meeting. It's a pretty short process, so the outcome of the review will be evident, quite soon, also to the larger public. So I don't know if that was helpful, but you can look up tracer methodology as well and learn more about it if you'd like to. Yeah, and I'm happy to share some tools as well. Show up with that.
This is Shay, and that's but I think that's great information for people who aren't as involved in that world as you are, to understand how, why we haven't shared our metric or whatever already is really helpful. So thank you for that information.
Kelsey.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, so going into this, I definitely had the assumption that it would be a systems review. And I am very interested in analyzing policy, not so much looking at sort of going after individuals by any means. But my question is, maybe it would be helpful for you to let us know how many of us, what would be helpful? Like, what would you envision? Maybe that would be helpful. Because clearly there's a lot of interest, but if you say, I think I need 2, that would help us.
Yeah, great point. I think given the time that we have, I think 2 is a great number. I really do. That's the number that came up for me. To find balance in it being effective and to have some hands on deck, but also not to be having to kind of manage a whole sub process to this larger process, right? Also, I frankly think other tasks on that task list I think we need some more help from the committee in other places. But yes, I would say, I mean, I want this to be a committee decision, but since you asked me this question directly, what feels good to me is 2 extra folks on that task.
Did you all already talk to all the other tasks?
No, we didn't. Before we end this task, I do just want to remember to say that, yes, Shay and I met with the chief and Captain Kerrigan last week, and we were able to talk about a lot of what we just talked about today in terms of like really ensuring that the scope of the project is clear. And also want to speak to the fact that like, this is not the beginning, this is not the end. This is a piece of work, and the piece of work in regards to the police review is really about like that, which I think is a really great tool for the police department itself, right? Like to be able to have access to, which is this like neutral, bigger picture lens of sort of outside looking in, looking at very rarely, even an administrator in a system gets the time to really do that like deep dive in, looking at how all the policies and procedures connect. So I think the outcome of this is going to be very beneficial to the police also as a system. And, those leaders in the department have been, really cooperative with our requests and are aware that we're going to be asking for more information. And we also had a nice dialogue about how we may engage the perspective and, of the officers themselves through potential for listening sessions. So that was just to give you all an update of that conversation. That was the scope of that dialogue.
We gave them some information just about how we imagine certain parts of the process to go. Mm-hmm. And they gave us some information about how they imagined some of our gathering information might go the best also. And like some just ideas from their perspective about, what those sessions might look like in order for folks to feel open enough to share and things like that. And yeah, they've so far been really responsive to our request for information and really, they're, I think they see, and I don't want to speak for anyone else, but they see themselves as already on a path of like being engaged and thinking about how to police, and acknowledge that we may have like differing ideas about that. Of course, any of us might, but they seem pretty like welcoming of the opportunity to hear about the imaginations of the community about it. So that was that meeting. And we're not going to probably give everyone full updates about every meeting that we do in like a one-on-one, like organizationally. I'm going to just be having so many phone calls. I probably won't give you all a full heads up about all of them, but that one is initial and pretty foundational to the process. We figured we should probably let you all know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So to look back, I'm going to share my screen again to look back at the other tasks. Okay. pinning the interpreter. Great. Okay. So I think that the anonymous testimony, my thoughts, take them for what they are worth to you. This is Emily speaking. I think the anonymous testimony survey development is a place where we could really use some labor in terms of the creation of that tool itself and into an operational tool that then we can also, jumping down below to the advertising and engagement, we could then really focus on getting the word out. I think given our short time frame, giving as many people in our community as many different opportunities for engaging in this process in the short time we have for engagement, I think is a really good use of our time and labor as a committee. And then there's the information gathering sessions themselves, participation in that, recognizing that we have to be mindful of the quorum size. So I think individual committee member participation in those, or up to 2, in each one, or 3 would be good. Maya is interested in working on drafting the community safety ecosystems map. And then there's the data and collection and analysis, which, if we do something like SurveyMonkey for the anonymous testimony piece, that system will analyze a lot of the data for us. And we may have to pay for SurveyMonkey, status that will give us the capacity that we need to be able to do the analytics or something else. If someone, this literally SurveyMonkey is like the limit of my knowledge of this kind of thing. So if others are more tech savvy in that way, then I would love to hand a lot of that over. And then the gathering and sharing care planning info. Sorry about that. Drift, you said you're interested in that, and I really appreciate that. I think it would be helpful for someone to be able to work on that as well. Okay, thoughts, folks?
This is Drift. I just want to say I'm interested in working on some other things where I'm needed. The eco map sounds super interesting to me, and also developing the assessment tools and data. That's a big foundation, right? So happy to help out on that. Don't have a lot of experience besides school and stuff, but happy to research and help with that because it's really important.
Awesome, thank you.
I'm with Drift. I'll help.
Thanks, Darlene.
I'd also be happy to help with the survey design and then also the promotion of it and the getting it to the right places so that people see it.
Mm-hmm. Great. So go ahead.
And I'm also happy to just focus my energy on the survey if that's where I'm most needed.
Great. So it sort of feels like there's I want to clarify 2 tasks. One is the survey design and getting that word out. And then the other is the getting the word out for the information gathering sessions, which would end up working very closely with Shay as Shay is scheduling the information gathering sessions. This subgroup of folks, this subcommittee of folks would be, or the individuals interested in this task would be working with Shay to essentially just dialogue about how to share that information, to get that information out as widely as possible. And the public forums, right? So the public forums and the anonymous testimony are the 2 info sessions that are really as wide as possible to the public. They're on the opposite ends of the privacy spectrum. One is completely anonymous, the other is public. And then the information gathering sessions will be with more specific groups of folks. So I think it would be nice to have a couple of folks that are working on the development of the survey, the anonymous testimony survey, getting that developed, running it by the committee. In one of our next meetings, the committee can decide on the final draft of it, the questions, and then getting that anonymous testimony out, following that thread from start to finish, right? And then it would be, I think, helpful to have folks who are focused on like getting the word out for the forums, the public forums, and the like helping Shay get the word out for the listening sessions. What do folks think about that kind of like clarification of those tasks?
I agree.
It sounds like mostly everybody's really willing to like
Mhm.
pitch in wherever they have skills and are needed. And that's so awesome. And I think we can be, we can send out emails to folks who are interested in different things and try to just move from there. Potentially, I don't know how formal our assigning needs to be in this space. And we're also quite moving past our
Yeah.
time. As the least skillful timekeeper, I am gonna say that we're moving past our timekeeping. So I'm like a timekeeper on like a 13-minute delay. No, 7-minute delay.
So can I just ask one question, Shay, before we transition? This is Emily. I'm definitely a worse timekeeper than anybody else I know. But Kelsey, Kaz, and Bob all said they wanted to do the Brattleboro Police piece. I'm fine with having 3 folks work on it. Do you 3 want to choose to work on the Brattleboro Police piece, or do any of you, now after this conversation, want to kind of choose a different task?
Yes.
Yeah. So, do you think that would it be feasible to be working on 2 different sections of this? So because I am totally interested in doing some data analysis, but also I think my primary interest is in the police review. So, like, is that feasible? Okay, then yeah, I can do both of those things. Yeah.
Yeah, I will really leave that up to individuals to decide if they feel like they have the capacity. And it's totally cool. If you don't have the capacity to take on any extra tasks outside of the committee meetings, fine. If you want to be involved a little here and a little there, I'm fine with that. And we can check in as it goes. If it's not working for you, then you can make that choice. But, because you can review as little or as many policies that you want,
I'm not working, so I mean,
Okay.
I have a kid, but I'm not working, so I can
Okay. Great, thanks.
Yeah, I'm still really interested in helping with the systems, the Brattleboro PD review. My skill set's definitely in communication. I'm happy to help get the word out around the listening sessions, but my skill set is not tech piece. So in terms of like developing tools, you don't want my help.
Okay. Great.
Thank you.
Bob?
Yeah, I try to be helpful in whatever way that I can. I'm not. I think it's very important that the word gets out to folks that you really want to bring into this to get their input. Unfortunately, in the COVID era and in everything else that's going on, that is awfully difficult and almost, and there are a lot of barriers in place for myself personally in how to do that. There's a real trick to get, someone to share at that level. I mean, there's one person on this call who I shared something with recently this week. It's not something that I would share in this meeting, in a public forum. So it's something that it's not a piece that involves community safety, but if it were, it would be at the level of something that you would really want to know. But in order to get the comfort level of that person to share that, that's going to be very difficult. That's a very important piece. I don't know that I can do that. I would say that's probably the most important thing. I said that I would be involved with the police review part only because I have some background and probably can figure out, what the Vermont statutes say and, look that up and tell you what that means, if that's useful. I'm not too sure I know a lot about tracer methodology, so I'll have to learn to see what that is. In terms of getting the word out, I did say maybe or put it at the end because for the reason I just stated, and then also because I can be an adjunct to that, but I can't be the main person to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
As far as developing questions, I'd probably vote with Kelsey on that part.
Thanks, Bob.
Great.
Anyone want to say anything else before we move on from this agenda item?
I just want to say that maybe like if somebody is really interested in a little subsection of the project and wants to like call them, like if the committee wants to say we have leads, like a point person, could be helpful for me as a committee member. I don't know if that'd be helpful. Maybe we could probably talk offline about that, as we figure out roles and needs, but just an idea.
Great.
Cool.
And for at least some of the tasks, Emily's going to really be the lead, and I'm going to be really the lead for certain portions. And there might be other portions where that's not necessary. If somebody wants to like take the questions we've already designed and plug them into the most awesome online tool ever, we might not need one of the facilitators to be like on top of that the whole time, for example. But in things like having one-on-one meetings with people who've experienced harm in the system, I'm going to probably be the lead on that. I think it's probably my responsibility to be the lead on that. And it's our responsibility as facilitators to be extra, like really aware and abreast of every step of the way of certain parts of the projects. And similarly, Emily's probably going to take the lead on the police review part. And she's going to read every document, even if somebody else is reading it, probably on some level, because she's really holding that piece as well. So, but I think that there might be other parts that we could like not hold as tightly with, and that would be really effective and helpful and awesome.
Yeah, I think I meant more like housekeeping stuff of little triads or do it,
Yes.
whatever. It might not be necessary, but yeah.
We love housekeeping leads. We love that.
I just wanted to echo that I think with Bob's experience, it probably would be really wise to call upon his background and his experience for thinking about law enforcement. And anyway, I just wanted to echo that.
Yeah, I agree. This is Emily. And I think having Kaz, Kelsey, and Bob, the three of y'all involved in that review process is great. I'm psyched about that. And so what because of our agenda where we're at, what I'd like to do with the committee's permission is send a follow-up email with like this clarification of the little groups of task work, the task work that we're going to be doing, and suggestions of leads. Who would lead that? As Shay just said, might be a facilitator, or there might be a potential for a committee person to do that. And then you can email us back individually if there's something you'd like to be changed about that. Does that feel okay? And then that will kind of embark us on those tasks, those tasks. Great.
We may also just hear from other committee members. There's a couple of people who couldn't be here. So we may also hear from them, and that's great too.
Great. And we have a chat in the box from Lisa Chen. FYI, I have 17 years of law enforcement experiences if I can help in any way. Thank you, Lisa. We're actually going to have a moment for public comment in just a few moments. So I'd love to hear from you if you'd like to share. Thank you. Okay, Shay. Oh, plan for public forums. Nope, still me. Okay.
I mean, that could be either all of us.
Right.
Too.
Yeah. Please.
If it's all right with folks, we're going to go just a little tiny bit longer, and then we're going to take a 5-minute break. Does everybody feel accepting of just a few more minutes, and then we'll take a break? Awesome. So you're going to share your screen, Emily?
I am, yeah.
Awesome.
And this is the survey results from the second question on the survey, which was some ideas we had formulated at our last meeting for how to move forward with public forums. And it looks like if we want, we can go with a majority vote if we want to, or we can kind of deliberate more, but it looks like the idea of having 2 public forums and 2 regular team meetings in November got the most votes. So thoughts on this?
This is Shay. I didn't vote, but I also like that plan.
Yeah, I didn't vote
I wasn't
either.
a committee member, but I also think that plan sounds like space for really putting our energy toward information gathering in the middle. Emily and I have talked about this, like an on-ramp of setting it all up, coasting in the information gathering sessions for November, really, and then an off-ramp into December into like analyzing the data and producing the report. And I would love to spend a lot of the next month really gathering information. So to me, using a little bit of our meeting time toward that sounds really cool. But I'm just one person, and I hope my voice is not louder than anyone else's in that decision-making process. So feel free to digress.
Well, I didn't vote either, and I agree.
Thanks, Darlene.
I was just wondering, because there is such an unknown of how many people are going to even come to the public forum. So I think this is a great plan. And I'm just wondering if someone was to, during one of our regular meetings, during the public participation, want to share or speak. I know time is often limited, but would we have space for that if someone showed up to a meeting in that way?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good idea. This is Emily. That's a good idea, Kelsey. And I know there was some discussion around like starting with 2, and then if we had really strong turnout and desire for, if it was clear, if there was a desire for more, we could schedule more, kind of going with the momentum. But I do think it's a good idea. You know, our meetings, clearly our committee meeting time is very precious, and in terms of the work we need to accomplish. But yeah, I think that could be an option as well.
I would say, this is Shay, that I think the public is free to say whatever they want in public comment. That's public comment. And also that the way that we're going to be hearing from people more privately also will be held in a way. And the public forum might include a specific invitation that includes, you can say whatever you want, but also here are the questions that we're seeking information about, you know? And so I think while the public, I think, should be invited to share with us whatever they think is relevant, I also really want to let folks know that that's not even close to the only way that they are allowed to share, and also that some of the other ways might be held a little more. You know, we won't be like brushing aside what they say to get to the next agenda item necessarily in some other ways of gathering that information. Not that we would brush people aside in this situation, but like, you know, in this space, we have a meeting to run, and in that space, all we're doing is reverently holding people's vulnerable information. So both are possible, but yeah.
The other thing that comes up with this piece of it is that if we want to hold 2 meetings where there's enough space for us to potentially hold more, if there's more people that want to share, then we've got to get on scheduling the 2 public forum meetings and getting the word out there, right? So that has to happen, really has to start this week. And we could even, since we decided that Mondays were good, you know, we can put out a poll for I think it would be better to not do it in this meeting, but to put out a poll for what dates we want to schedule the November public forum dates. But I think it would make sense to get those scheduled as soon as possible so those committee members working on outreach can get the information out there, so folks are aware of it as well. So, and then also so that we have time in the event that we feel like we need to do more than 2.
I have a question, or maybe just an idea about the data collection. If we're doing anything creative, like asking for people's, you know, submitted art or something, like what does community safety mean to you, or policing, and then some way of showcasing, whether in a zine or digitally or whatever, a more artistic submission. We might get something interesting from folks who wouldn't want to give a verbal or written kind of thing.
That's part of the plan. This is Shay. We definitely have that as part of the plan. My hope is that we will have a couple of different press releases that are going to go out soon-ish, and that will be with the help of whoever is helping me take on advertising, essentially. But now that we're going to finish hopefully this meeting, although we're quite behind, writing up some questions for people who work in the systems. Last time we really focused on questions for people who've experienced these systems. But I think once we get that done, as Emily said, the task is just going to be scheduling, and getting the word out. And one of the things I would love to get the word out about with y'all's help is this piece about other ways of sharing and how we can encourage folks to do that. I would love to hear people's songs and see people's visual expressions and hear people's slam poetry and dance moves and whatever else, in addition to the really hard and fast data that we're going to be collecting in other ways. So.
Yeah, and I think that this is Emily, the team working on data collection can also work on creative ways to collect data, like helping people walking people through scanning art in and emailing it to us, or we can record the public forums so we can get some recorded information as well, and then figure out how we want to use that recording for the purpose of the report itself.
I'm getting really good at GarageBand, so there's a lot of potential. And iMovie.
So in order to move on today, how do folks feel about going with the majority vote plan of moving forward with the 2 public forums in November and scheduling 2 public forums and scheduling 2 committee meetings, and then maybe scheduling the public forums a little earlier so we have time to schedule more if we need to?
Digital or actual thumbs?
Yeah, we got some thumbs. Any dissent? Anyone needing to talk more about it? Okay, great. Thank you
We
all.
welcome challenge. If there's any challenge, please bring it. Friction is good for us. It builds us up. Okay.
Great. So I will send out a poll to the committee in regards to schedule, like which dates we want to actually make those public forums happen. Great. Alrighty, shall we take a 5-minute break here? Great. So let's return at 7:15. Thank you all. Welcome back, everybody. And before we get into more question design for systems, we wanted to make sure we had a moment for public comment before we run out of time, because we want to hear from folks. So I think this is a good time. If anybody from the public would like to comment, please use the blue raise hand feature. You can go ahead and raise your hand. And if you'd like to comment on anything that we've done today or in past meetings, or if you have questions for us, please go ahead and let us know. We don't see any hands up, but I'll give it another moment. If anybody wants to speak, feel free. Alrighty. Well, we will move on, and if we have time at the end, we'll also be able to take more public comment. So let us know. Alrighty. Shay, you want to take it away?
Yeah, let me orient myself to my little agenda again here. Collaborating organizations.
Right.
Not a ton to report. I think the next agenda item is really going to help those take off, which is us, you all helping me to formulate questions for people who work inside of the systems that we're talking about here. Last time we did a great job of brainstorming a bunch of questions for the folks who have experienced system response or have experienced danger or harm and didn't experience response or that type of thing. But, you know, we've reached out to a few initial collaborators quite early on. And then I was quite sick last week and quarantined and not doing a lot of work. And this week is going to be all about calling all those people on that finalized list that we made last time and scheduling conversations with folks who work at all those places, scheduling listening sessions with a few of them, but also just having a lot of conversations with people. Like I said, both people like we talked about last time who have experienced systems response and people this time we can talk a little bit more about who work inside of those systems. So that project was slightly delayed by illness, but is gonna start cranking right away. And if anybody, again, we named that if anybody had any more ideas about collaborative organizations or organizations that we should be talking to, you can feel free to email them to us. We didn't get any more. We feel like it's a pretty good starting list, much like Emily's police review process. You may talk to somebody and they're like, you know who else you should talk to is so-and-so. But the other piece of that would be helpful from you all is if anybody has any ideas about the most important contact people, not just like I know a guy, because that's fine too. But like if there's people who's particularly who positionally or due to their actual work, you think would be the best people for me to talk to at any of those organizations on our big list, please send that to me in an email too, because it's really helpful. You know, I can like cold call any institution or organization, and I know a lot of people too, but you know, it'd be more helpful if folks are like, oh, this person, you know, who works in an X system, they see this stuff and they would be a great person to talk to or whatever. So, otherwise I'll be calling just a lot of probably managers and, you know, directors and that's great. And we'll have conversations with them. But if anyone has any more info about who specifically inside of those orgs would be great for us to get information from, let me know.
I was
Wow.
wondering, did we have probation and parole on there?
We do. Yeah.
Okay.
And I see Bob's hand. Bob, take it away.
So I ask a cryptic question. I think I talked to 3 or 4 people in the last week and suggested that they connect with you. I think one person definitely did, but I'd like to follow up with some of the others. Did you get some people contacting you?
Yes. Yeah, we did. Yeah, this is Emily. We have, and yeah, anytime someone, the email address, the CSRT, wait, community safety, CSRT, yes, protonmail.com. That's a great email address to give folks because it goes right into that inbox. It's dedicated to this project. Shay and I both have access, and it helps us kind of with our to-do list, right? So anyone who has responded to us or sent us an email, and there have been several folks from the community that represent an organization that want to have reached out themselves, and we are responding to them and scheduling. I think Shay just put the email address in the chat. And we're scheduling one-on-ones with them. So yes, that's a great strategy, Bob and others, if you know somebody who might want to talk to us. And that can be anybody from the community that plays any role or that has any experience they want to share. It doesn't have to be someone who's an employee or a leader at an organization. It can be, or it can also be anybody. And I'm going to send y'all I'm going to send you an email with a bunch of information from what we've talked about today, but it'll include that draft of the ecosystems map with the list of organizations. That way it'll help you sort of get a sense of what we're talking about here in terms of what Shay's asking for.
And that's a great segue into our next topic. I don't know if does anyone have anything that they need to share about people in orgs, or do folks just want to send those things to us in email if needed? Yeah, Cass.
Yeah, I used to work for Vermont Psychiatric Survivors, which I think would be a good org. There's been like a nearly total staff changeover though, and I don't. Ann Downing is the only person who I really know working there now. So, yeah.
Great. I can find them.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
All right. The next agenda item is for us to begin to name some questions that we have for those very people who work inside of systems. This could be questions for groups of police officers, people who work in dispatch, crisis support workers of various types, people who work in nonprofits around, etc. Any of these kind of like systems that are part of our community that currently have anything to do with people's safety, danger, wellness, etc. And last time we asked this question to you in a specific format, which is what are the most essential things that we need to understand from these people? We don't really have so much time, but what are the most essential questions that we have for people who work in systems that respond to danger or harm that would help us evaluate community needs and make recommendations to our community for change. And I think folks can just bring it on. Kelsey's got a hand up. I'm lowering it for you. What do you got, Kelsey?
I think it'd be great to ask what they see, what areas they see we need improvement, what gaps that they recognize. Because certainly the people providing services within these systems definitely have a great perspective on that most of the time.
What are the gaps as you see them?
I would ask where do services exist, but people are not connecting to them, either because they don't know about them, they feel like they can't, or, sort of sub question, like, why are people not getting help that they need or refusing it?
I would also, my name is Darlene, sorry. I would say, like, what are some of the resources out there that aren't listed on the 211 that people could call and get help with, especially during this pandemic?
I'm curious to hear from folks, like if they were given this sort of magic question of, your organization or whatever has just been allowed to hire create 5 positions, what would you add? Maybe they'll say 5 social workers, maybe they'll say nurses. I don't know.
This is Shay. I like those kind of visioning questions, Drift, of like, we're 5 years closer to the ideal world. What does it look like? Or, resources are being allocated justly to meet everybody's needs. Where are they? Or, you know, those kind of like affirmative questions toward what we do want are often really great space for people to get creative and envision things. So thank you for that.
And this is Emily. I just want to note we had a comment from Lisa Chen. What is the priority in responding to the public's request? How is it prioritized? So I'm not sure if this means the public in regards to this meeting. Lisa, we just had a moment of public comment. You may or may not have been in the meeting though at that point, because I know I let you into the waiting room, and I think it might have been from the waiting room, and I think it might have been after that. So we just had a moment for public comment in this meeting, and if we have time at the end of the meeting, we'll have another one. You can also email us at the email that Shay just put above, and Shay and I, the facilitators of this process, are happy to respond. No worries. Sorry about that. No worries. But I do want you to know we did just have that moment for public comment.
We'll try to make another moment for
Yeah.
at the end, but we'll stick to this agenda
Great.
item right now because we're behind, and we'll go from there if that's all right.
Yeah.
Other questions? Keep it flowing. Keep it moving. Other questions for people who work in systems? They don't know anything about this process. I'm going to give them a briefest orientation, and then boom, what is it that we want to know from these folks?
I would like to hear from folks what biases they recognize within their system, you know, whether it be unconscious biases that they think need to be addressed.
Yeah. Who, if
My
anyone,
question,
is under-supported is a thing that I'm interested in that's related. Sorry, go ahead, Laura.
yeah, this is Laura. My question was similar to that. It was something around, like, have they had training that's been powerful around bias, or what like trainings do they wish that everyone in working with them could have around anti-bias, anti-racist training?
Wait, can I chime in?
Yeah.
I don't quite know how to phrase this, but like what cultural changes, what changes in the community would like make their jobs obsolete? I guess I when I was a patient representative, I really just wanted like things to be so different that I didn't have to have that job at all. That like that the job wasn't necessary. I don't know what the best way to phrase it is.
Yeah, what cultural shift would put this response work out of business?
Yeah.
That's great. I have several too, but I'd love to hear from other folks first. If anyone has any more ideas. I think, this is Shay, I'll add a couple. I think simply, what would make the people you support's lives safer? What, if anything, about the way the system responds to hard situations makes those situations worse or harder? What harm, if any, is added into the situation by responses that you see? And are there any responses to, I don't know how to phrase it, but hard situations or dangerous situations or crisis? Are there any responses that you are really excited about, or any, nationally or locally? Are there any sort of like models that people are beginning to engage with that they want to see more engagement with? Those are some of the questions that I have as well. There's more, but.
I would also ask, and prefacing it by asking them to de-identify as much as possible for an example of a success and a failure within their system, and then ask them to do a little bit of analysis about whether those things happened because the system was working the way it's designed, or if it was working, if the success was happening because it was working outside of the way the system was designed, and so to see how those things track together.
I love that.
I love that too, 'cause I know folks that I talk to in different systems are always able to identify situations or cases where the system failed individuals, and that feeling of like having to keep going with the work, but how hard that is to recognize.
Totally, and it's really demoralizing to work in a place where you're trying to make change and to like watch it not be able to happen. And also a lot of people are, you know, feel stuck in the way that it is because it's the way that it is, and we need our jobs and we need to keep going to work every day. And this might be a space for that simultaneous zoom out dig in that Emily's talking about with the police review. This is also that with the community. We're zooming out to see the big picture, and we're digging really deep to see what specific situations, how these things impact specific people. And hopefully we can kind of steer as a whole community, steer in a direction that we discover together and articulate together. So those are really great questions. Are there any more burning questions that you think are sort of the essential things that we need to learn from people who work in systems of response or systems of support or systems of crisis? There's one in the chat.
Yeah.
To what extent does your agency work together with community members to solve local problems? What are examples of that collaboration potentially? That's great.
And this is Emily. I just want to know, I wonder if we can get a couple more of the visionary questions, because I feel like having worked for many, many years in community response systems, it's so easy to get caught up in the like need for more time and money resources, which is really valid. And also like, I'm curious about the questions where we can help folks in these brief conversations with Shay, like help folks kind of think in terms of like the kinds of visionary ideas and like doing things quite differently that I think this committee is open to exploring, and that this process is hoping for and open to exploring. So questions that get folks who are really like, you know, in the daily grind of it, kind of thinking a little bit more in that visionary big picture, what's possible kind of thing, thinking. Thanks. I don't have any.
Can you share the previous slide where
Yes.
the first question? Thank you.
So this is the first question. Most essential needs, things we need to understand about the system's role in order to evaluate community safety needs and make recommendations.
I think even just as simple as what would a totally safe Brattleboro look like is really interesting to me. I know that we're not going to get there immediately, but it's a great opening way of really thinking about like, where are we pointing our arrows, you know?
These are a lot of questions. We got 3
I know.
pages of questions here. So
And
this
I
is
also
good.
want to say that just like with the other questions, these are jump off questions, and I'm not going to be really rote and mechanical about these experiences. I think if somebody's like in the midst of some really great sharing about something, I'm not going to be like really harshly trying to like stick to this agenda as an exclusive. Every single question is going to get answered. I definitely think if there's not enough time to get a lot of info from folks, I'm going to try to schedule more than one session with people and really do the best we can to be comprehensive. But I have a feeling, as happens in so many other conversations, that people will have some things to say often.
Mhm.
So we'll also follow what people have to share and also guide what people have to share to be relevant. There's a question that I don't know how to articulate, but I just want to articulate to you all that I would like to ask, which is something about a framework that I have inherited, which is essentially what are reformist reforms and what are sort of revolutionary reforms. The difference being reformist reforms might build up parts of systems that we actually don't want to build up in the long term for the short-term gain of something being theoretically better. And what are types of reforms or steps that are in line with the overarching long-term goal, so that like we know that it all can't happen in one day, but are we like building up things that we actually are going to end up having to tear down because we just need a band-aid in the moment? Or are we really being like mindful in a long-term sense of what systems need to expand and what systems need to contract, and making our reforms in line with those larger visions? And that's way too inarticulate of a question to ask, but I think about what are steps that you envision that are in line with those larger ideas is definitely a direction of questioning that I'm interested in envisioning with folks. We can often get caught up in reforms that feel like they might be a band-aid in the moment, but or a tourniquet in the moment even, but are not necessarily in line with that larger arching goals of deeply, deeply safer world for all the people. All right. If you have more
What I'd
ideas,
like to know is what
Yeah.
kind of resources were available back in the days when our parents were younger? Like, where did they go to get help, and who did they reach out to? So I was wondering if we could reach out to like that, the more elderly people and find out what kind of resources were available to them.
Yeah, kind of like
love
what's
that.
gone away. Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Darlene.
This is Jeff.
All
I just
right.
had a question with
Yeah,
these
Jeff.
like very specific system service responding questions. Are you all going to be also collecting just like a general implicit bias survey to kind of get a gauge of that? I'm sorry if I missed that in your whole plan. I did read through it, I swear.
I believe that you did. We hadn't talked about surveying all these people in that specific way yet, but I'm open to y'all's perspective about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that might be something we could, I mean, asking someone directly about their unconscious or implicit bias is minimally effective, right? Because by definition, they're implicit or unconscious. And I know that there are tools out there that help to get to that question. So that could be something that one of the subgroup tasks forces can kind of, don't want to use the word task force, just decided that, that can kind of can look into, if we do want to do an anonymous survey that's for systems as well as an anonymous testimony survey, we could talk about that. That's a pretty good idea, Drift. Thank you. And Kaz wrote in the chat box, reforms that line up with attrition of oppressive systems. So like adding on
To what Shay was saying.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We also have Gary who's saying, what about on a judicial level, like the courthouse and public defender's office? The Vermonte Sherry did make it on the list of the folks that we're connecting with. Yeah, Bob brought that up last month or last week. Last month feels like last month. Bob brought that up last week as well. So we added them to our list as well.
As well as the state's attorney's office and victim services, which Kelsey brought up last month. Meaning Great. Let's move on.
And I bumped into Mel
Oh, yeah.
Motel this evening, and she is super stoked. She said, anything we need, reach out to her. She'll be more than willing to help us.
Well, we're gonna.
Oh, yes.
Thanks, Darlene.
Awesome.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be so critical that the committee is like the ambassadors of this project, you know, and like as we move forward with the listening sessions and the information gathering sessions, I think that's going to be huge. So thank you all for your ambassadorship of this project. It's critical. So we wanted to spend, I'd like to leave a few minutes for public comment at the end. We wanted to spend maybe about the next 10 minutes or so talking about our plan for engaging the community. Speaking of, nice segue right into that. Essentially our ambassadorship, you know, some of the topics here are the plan for advertising and engagement, plan for anonymous data collection, which we can again talk more about as the folks tasked with developing that anonymous survey is going to have to come to this group for review and finalization before it goes out to the world or Brattleboro, the town. And talking a little bit about de-identification, which we're going to need to get into more also as we move forward and get some of these like design pieces of the work off the table. The data and gathering and data analysis pieces is essential. The advertising and outreach and engagement, and then the data gathering and data analysis piece is what's going to be left in the next phase for the committee to do.
So I think in this space around advertising and engagement, that's a whole task that some folks can help with at some point. But do folks have ideas off the bat? During a pandemic, entering the winter, about ways that we can be getting the word out to folks about these various levels of engagement. Ideas that we already have are putting out some press releases about the forums, about the online tool, about the opportunity for one-on-one interviews with us, and social media blasting in some type of way, and potentially asking folks who are in these collaborative organizations or asking folks who, you know, whose job it is to be in connection and community with various sub-communities within the community to help us get the word out. But do folks have other brilliant strategies that we haven't thought of yet that we should be integrating into this plan?
I don't know if their money is in it, but you know, you can do like the every door. I used to work for the post office, but you know, like a mailer to just a whole zip code or zip codes. And it's pretty cheap if you wanted to like do a postcard with like, here's the date of the town halls, here's the link to the survey. And they just literally, you create it and you whatever, set it up for whatever zip code you want to go to. And we'd have probably the research, the cost, but then they can just ship it out to every house in that zip code. It's an option.
Love that idea. Thank you, Drift. Physical card that you can put on your fridge, and remember, physical things are going away. I'm really happy about that. I'm happy about the idea. Thank you. Kelsey, you have your hand up?
Yeah, so it's not really a brilliant idea, but I did already plant the seed in Peter Fish's ear about this committee, and I'm happy to walk downstairs and talk to him more about it. I just need a little bit of a prompt from you two and the committee of sort of like what we might be asking of him. Yeah.
That's great.
Thank you, Kelsey.
I know we have lots of journalists in the participants, so we'll get our press release. We'll be reaching out to you. Not only fish is what I'm saying, but also fish.
Yeah.
All of you guys. Great.
Yeah, and I feel excited about having a few committee members who are really working on like the creation of what's going to, like literally what's going to be written on those tools, right? And then also committee members who are going to be focusing on creating the anonymous testimony, because I feel like those are kind of like nitty gritty tasks that need to come back to the committee for review and discussion and approval, but also can best be done, I think, in a smaller, kind of more individual.
When
way.
you say creating the anonymous testimony, do you mean the tool, the Survey
The tool.
Monkey?
Yeah, the Survey Monkey, the tool. Yeah.
Wonderful.
And then bringing it back to this committee before dissemination, both of these things. But yeah, if we decide to do a mailer, for example, somebody who is jazzed about creating some kind of postcard can, can take that on.
Great.
And then the other piece, care planning for participants. Drift, this is something you were interested in working on?
Yeah, I'm assuming it's sort of like a resource guide or ideas or even like community safe, some, I don't know, a food share or something. I don't know, whatever,
Yeah.
Perseverance and resilience kind of thing, but also information to direct resources, which Vermont is kind of limited, honestly. So, I mean, I do this at the retreat, but I don't know everything. So if somebody wants to help or, shoot me ideas or things, like, I don't know if the committee wants a resource guide, if we want some virtual healing spaces, maybe with some facilitators who can tender to the community or whatever. I'm Wiccan, so I have some knowledge of that kind of spiritual stuff, but whatever the community might need, I don't know. Ideas.
And Lana had suggested too, like making sure that when we're in communication with groups and resources that predominantly support BIPOC and Black and Indigenous and people of color, that we are really making sure that whatever sort of healing and support resources that we have are like competent and there to tend to the pain of these systems, specifically for those folks, and also that those resources are lacking in this area. And so we simultaneously don't have a magic panacea that's gonna like cover all the resources that are missing. And also I wonder about just supporting and building up some of the existing mutual support resources that exist to say, hey, people who are interested in mutual support, newly or ongoing, like, do you want to put some of that time toward helping to take care of these people if there's care needs? So I'm excited about doing some of that visioning with you, Drift, and others quite soon, so that we can we want to have the online tool and the questions that we've developed in the last 2 meetings and the care stuff set by like this week, so that we can we can offer those to the first round of people who will be offering us their wisdom. So we can talk in the next couple of days, if you're open to that, about just an initial version of that. Great.
So what I want to say about de-identification, we'll talk more about this in coming weeks, but we have no need to capture anyone's demographic information, any identifying information, their name, who they are, right? So I just want to remind folks that there's not any need for us to be, again, this is a systems review. We're gathering stories and we're understanding systems responses from a systemic lens. And so just like we talked a lot last week about, there's no need to verify or prove anyone's story. There's no need to attach anyone's story to anyone's identity. We will be gathering information and asking people about any relevant identities they want to share about. And that is like more of an answer to a question than it is any observation that any interviewer is making about somebody's identity, right? It's a question response like any other question response that we will weave into the stories, that folks are sharing. And so the best approach, I think, to de-identification is that it's across the board, that we are going to be tracking some data, like which organizations we reach out to, which organizations we do listening sessions with, but the data about who's in those listening sessions or who's part of those one-on-one meetings does not need to be captured at all. Like the person. And so, the greatest downside to that is the risk of duplication, which is quite a low risk in this situation, because we're going to be gathering so much data that it shouldn't really be weighting the information that we receive all that much if someone ends up in a public forum and also responds to the anonymous testimony survey. Does that make sense? So we can talk more about that, but that's the sort of point I wanted to just remind us in terms of the framework that we're taking, that there isn't a need for us to be gathering anyone's demographic information. So we can just kind of liberate ourselves from that need.
And also, I want to say that a lot of times people think that that is really important. I think people acknowledge that that's really important for people who've experienced these system responses and experienced harm from the system, because it's literally dangerous for people to burn a bridge with an organization that they desperately need support from, or out themselves to a safety system as a person who with a red flag on their name. Like, that's a real actual danger. I also want to acknowledge that if we can slightly bring that into the organizational realm as well, I think that it will also free organizations to be really radically honest. It's not going to come back to your supervisor that you are the person who said that your workplace has some things in it that are busted and need some work, or like that you really want something to be awesomely different. And, that it can also hopefully be freeing in that regard as well. So I'm really hoping that for people who work inside of any of these systems, they can also feel really safely held and free to share vulnerably about what some of those, what their observations are about, like what they want and what they vision and what they dream for, and what's so challenging about like being inside of a system that doesn't always work or is built to not work for certain people or whatever. So that's been sort of the meta level conversations about these things that we've had even out in the community. People have like named that it might feel really intimidating for people to share their experiences of working in the systems as well. And we want to make sure that folks feel really open. Like, it's not going to be in the report like Jim said that he doesn't think his workplace is very good at all. It's going to be way zoomed out and hopefully therefore really able to be really honest about what's hard. You can take the call in a private little room, and we're not going to tell your boss. So you can just be real about what actually is true.
All right, we are running out of time. Any needs or comments from the committee before we take a few moments in public comment, if we can?
Just a quick question. I know we agreed to meet on Mondays for October. Are we sort of roughly planning on continuing with Mondays into November, and therefore public forums will be on Mondays?
Great question. We are meeting next Monday, right, which is still October. And then I'm going to send out this week, I'm going to send several things to you all, so please look out for that email. But one of those things is going to be a poll of when to schedule. And I'll probably start with the Monday framework, but offer a couple other days as well. Is there anything you want to say about that, Kelsey, in terms of where you're coming from?
I've slated it out with my childcare support, so it works.
Okay.
But I can make it work if needed.
It seems to make sense to keep the momentum going with that. Yeah.
The public forums are going to in some way replace the meetings. That
Right.
doesn't necessarily mean they have to happen on Mondays if it feels like there's going to be better attendance another day. Although during a pandemic, what is a day even for most of us? But it might be helpful for us to have like a weekend and a weekday or something to like capture different things.
Right.
And that would just mean that week we wouldn't have a Monday meeting and we might have a Saturday public forum or something. I don't think those have to be locked to Monday. Although if any of them are, it might mean that we can keep our regularity and keep our childcare and all of our plans like rolling, which is convenient. But I want to make sure that we also are just trying to meet people where they're at and make space for people where they are able to show up. And I don't even know what that looks like, but it's an intention.
So if any members of the public would like to speak or ask any questions, feel free to put a blue hand up. Gary, you can go for it. Go ahead and unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Awesome. I'm sorry, guys. I got in late. I just got out of a meeting with another committee. So I kind of missed a few items and a few things, but it looked interesting. And sorry about that, Emily. I was typing that other thing about the judicial thing. And the part that you said "da" was supposed to be "da." Sorry.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
Twist going on there. So, but yeah, I mean, like I said, if there's any other input that that you need, but for public participation, I guess, because right now you're brainstorming. So I don't know if you're going to make an announcement if it's going to be public participations for that particular evening and then set aside, like you said, a certain day. This is an open public participation. So other people can give you feedback from their experiences, and other committees and other organizations can probably jump in there. Because I know you had mentioned the CPCC, and I just mentioned I would also help you guys out from our end, because I'm on the vice chair. So if you need any advice, and also from my perspective, I'm more than willing, as I spoke to Ms. Ozer, being the concierge or your go-between, so that we can bridge the gap and get things. And I think the main thing basically is being of structures, of walls, and tearing it down so that we all can come to a common ground and understanding. I think that's the main thing, and certain inputs from outside as well as inside that you're reaching out for might be able to downsize what you're trying to get at. Because I know you're basically trying to figure out what is applicable to what you're trying to do here, what agencies, and that's very important too. So that way you're not shooting your arrow in places that are not making any impact, which makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to probably write down a few things, and I guess at your next meeting, and like I said, you guys have my email address too as well. I could just send it to you, maybe some ideas and some thoughts, and from personal experiences to give you some fuel for the fire, as they say.
Thank you, Gary. I appreciate that. And we will be reaching out more directly to you and folks on the CPCC as well to schedule some committee to committee process, either going to be like a couple of committee reps or like a publicly warned 2 committee conversation. So we are going to schedule that. That's on our list as well.
Right. Great. That's perfect.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, we'll keep you
Thanks,
on.
Gary.
Thank you. Have a good evening, and you guys stay safe.
You too.
All right.
All right, it looks like we have run out of time, and we have also connected with everything on our agenda, so that's great. So committee members, you'll be getting a robust email from us. Please take a moment in the next couple of days when you receive it to sit with it and comb through it. There will be some pieces that are just information, like I'll send you the tracer, some info on tracer methodology, for example, and there will be some pieces that will require response. So I'll try to format it in a way where that's all very clear. Thank you so much. And thanks to the community members who joined us as well.
I'm so grateful for you all in helping us to engage with this really actually wild process. So you all are really resourcing this process really well. And I just want to extend my gratitude before we leave. So that's all.
Yeah.
For your work. Good night.
Thank you.